Welcome to Giga Sports, your hub for the biggest football stories from the past 24 hours. Here's what you need to know. Manchester United's 2-0 win over Sunderland in the Premier League was more than just another 3 points. It was a performance that offered real insight into Ruben Amorim's tactical influence, particularly his ability to refine pressing structures and orchestrate smoother build-up phases from the opening whistle. It was clear Amorim had made subtle yet decisive adjustments. The most striking development was United's pressing shape. In previous matches, their press had often looked fragmented, with forwards committing without the necessary support behind them, leaving gaps for opponents to exploit. Against Sunderland, however, United pressed as a unit. The front three narrowed their distances, ensuring Sunderland's centre-backs were forced into rush passes. The triggers were also sharper. Whenever Sunderland attempted to play wide, United's wing-backs aggressively stepped up, supported by centre-backs who shifted across quickly to cover. This fluidity in the back three gave United the confidence to press high without being overly exposed. Amorim's hallmark, a collective understanding of when to step forward and when to retreat, was evident. Sunderland found themselves repeatedly suffocated, forced into errors that United capitalized on. Equally important was the improvement in United's build-up play. Amorim's tweak of using a back three in possession provided a more stable platform, with one midfielder dropping into the first line at times. United created numerical superiority against Sunderland's first line of pressure. The centre-backs split wider, allowing the wing-backs to push higher and stretch the opposition horizontally. This positional structure helped United bypass Sunderland's press with far greater efficiency than in previous outings. Particularly notable was the role of the midfielders. Amorim instructed them to stagger their positioning, one sitting deeper to connect play, one advancing between the lines, and one drifting wide to support circulation. This not only gave the ball carrier multiple passing options but also forced Sunderland's midfield into constant decision-making dilemmas. The end result was a smoother transition from defense to attack. Defensively, United were more compact and disciplined than in previous weeks. The back three, protected by the midfield shield, rarely allowed Sunderland's forwards to isolate them in dangerous positions. When United lost possession, their counterpress was immediate, another sign of Amorim's tactical imprint. Looking ahead, the significance of this 2-0 victory goes beyond the result. It provided a glimpse of how Amorim's ideas are embedding into the squad. If United can continue to press with this cohesion and build with this control, they will not only be harder to beat but also more adaptable against different opponents. Let's analyze.
Spoiler alert, Ruben Amorim has approached this game from a tactical standpoint differently than what we've been used to or what we've been expecting. And in fact, one of the main reasons why Manchester United were so dominant in this game was because of some of the tactical tweaks that Ruben Amorim has implemented ahead of this game. So obviously we know that Ruben Amorim favors that pentagon shape, to press with that front five. And the main reason for that is that there is an emergence now around Europe, of a trend where teams use inverted wing backs, to beef up the midfield, or teams that just play with a back three. Therefore, most teams that you face, they build up in a shape with 3 center backs and then 2 players ahead of them, either 2 defensive midfielders or 1 defensive midfielder and 1 inverted wing back. And so that pentagon shape, basically it allows you to go man for man and, press the opposition effectively. However, you have to understand that approach is actually similar to a laser. You concentrate all of the energy towards that shape, that 3-2 shape that the opposition have. But some teams, and I've talked about this in my Brentford video as well, some teams actually choose to kind of spread that energy by actually building up in a back four in a very traditional way with the number 6 who just drops here in between or in front of the center backs. So that renders that pentagon shape that Ruben Amorim favors ineffective. So how did Ruben Amorim adapt? Well, the way he adapts is everybody was talking about that 4-4-2 shape out of position, but I think it's kind of missing the point because the real reason behind this Ruben Amorim strategy is actually to limit the amount of time and space that Xhaka has, okay? Why? Because Xhaka is actually topping the chart for Sunderland when it comes to progressive passes, passes into the final third, long balls, key passes, as well as assists. In layman's term, everything that Sunderland does and does well goes through Xhaka. So basically, if you limit how much opportunity Xhaka has on the ball. Basically, you are just taking the heart and soul of this Sunderland team and forcing them to go out wide where they are not as effective at progressing the ball. So here, let's see how Sesko and Bemu were actually quite effective at limiting the opportunities that Xhaka had on the ball. So here, as you can see, as Sesko moves towards the ball carrier right here, Bemu goes tight on Xhaka. And then as the ball moves back, what we see now is the opposite, because as Mbemu is going to go and target these defenders, apply pressure on them. As you can see here, the Manchester United players are not really interested in those players. As you can see here, as Sesko moves again towards Mukiele, again Mbemu, as you can see, he sprints, moves towards Xhaka, and then as Mbemu moves towards the top side of the pitch, Sesko also comes closer to Xhaka, and again, they have no choice but to go long, and that's easy pickings for us. But they were not the only ones, Mbemu and Sesko, because Bruno Fernandes has also been quite instrumental in the effectiveness of this strategy. Again, same thing, you can see the Manchester United players are not applying any meaningful pressure on the center backs. They don't matter. The man who matters is Granit Xhaka over here, and as you can see, as Mbemu moves forward, and Sesko follows him, Bruno Fernandes is the one who actually sprints with intensity towards Xhaka in order to ensure that he doesn't get the ball. Now, of course, this was extremely painful for Sunderland because they could not get Xhaka in the game. Okay, he was completely out of the game. And so they could not assert any control over the game. And of course, they were already 2-0 down at that point. So obviously, Sunderland has reacted to that by taking out Adingra, a left winger, and then introduced Ballard, a centre back, in order to go into a back three, therefore adding an extra man into their build-up. But as we can see, Ruben Amorim had a ready-made solution, which is to just go back to his favored pentagon shape, which is exactly what what Manchester United have done. And as you can see, that was at the 38th minute. The substitution happened at the 36th minute. So Manchester United, almost immediately adapted to that substitution and that tactical tweak by Sunderland. And as you can see, again, we were quite effective because now, as you can see, even though Sunderland were able to add another man in defense, basically we were, again, able to go man on man, just a man marking system where we could just apply a maximum of pressure on each of their 5, build-up players. And of course, that worked out to our favor because we were actually able to win the ball and apply maximum pressure. Okay, and this concept here of just having players really close to Granit Xhaka is exactly how we were able to get that throw in from which Sesko scored. As you can see, Mbemu, Mount, and Sesko, they are all right next to Xhaka. He barely had, a sniff. And so Mbemu here is able to win the ball. And so we are able to find ourselves in an area where we can get a throw in. Also here, now this is the time where I kind of speculate. I don't have any evidence that this is what happened. But as we can see in the lead up to that throw-in from Diogo Dalot, Leny Yoro actually just lets the ball go into a throw-in, which kind of tells me that that was Ruben Amorim's plan. Because here, listen, I have to be fair when talking about Ruben Amorim. In the game against Brentford, I criticized his use of long throws as him being reactive. And in fact, there is plenty of evidence that points to that because we've had a few throw-ins in the opposition defensive third, and yet we did not go long. So that means it was kind of like an after-the-fact tactical tweak. Whereas here against Sunderland, every time we had the ball in the opposition's defensive third, we went long. And of course, we were able to score a goal from it, which just tells me that that was Ruben Amorim's intention all along. And so the fact that Leny Yoro just let the ball go out of play in order for us to have an opportunity to have a long throw, to me just shows that that was part of the plan, and that's great, okay? So what I just showed you, that was the defensive phase. Now, how about the attacking phase? How were Manchester United when we had the ball? Well, actually, one thing that was different is actually how adamant, especially players like Bruno Fernandes, were that we are supposed to just slow the tempo down. Slow things down, okay, here, and then here again, talking to Lamens, just being like, slow things down. And truthfully, I mean, in the first half, the Manchester United players really treated the ball with respect. In fact, for, I think, up until the 40th minute, we had like 60% of possession, and Sunderland hadn't even recorded a shot on goal. So again, that was a clear dominant display by Manchester United, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that the Manchester United players were not wasteful with the ball. But there's also another reason, and it's Bruno Fernandes' movement when it comes to the build-up. So again, the reason why Ruben Amorim likes this 3-4-3 system is because of the symmetry. Okay, the geometry of the system, in that you can press with 5 players, and then you can also build up with the same shape, with 5 players, 3 center backs and 2 midfielders. But the problem with that is that really, like, you are adding another man here, but it doesn't provide as much verticality. But in this game, things were different, because here Bruno was not actually paired with Casemiro in the build-up, but rather he would actually move forward in order to stretch the pitch vertically. And so what that did is that, as you can see, Bruno Fernandes is keeping players like Xhaka and, as you're going to see later, Enzo Lefebvre from actually being involved in the press. Therefore, it's actually provided these players with more time. With more time, it means that the players ahead, especially Mbeumo and Mason Mount, for example, they also had more time to make the right moves and then be able to receive the ball in a good position. For example, here Mbeumo does what Mbeumo does best, receive the ball and then on the turn. And here, this was the lead up to the Mason Mount goal. And again, you're going to see how this same concept, of like Bruno Fernandes moving further forward, stretching the pitch vertically, while the wingbacks were stretching the pitch horizontally, made it extremely difficult for Sunderland to press us effectively. And so we were able to progress the ball vertically with intent and then eventually create high quality chances. So as you can see here, Bruno Fernandes, usually you'd see him here in this position, on the same level as Casemiro, which made it easy for the opposition to defend against. But then here in this game, he would just move further forward. As you can see, him, Mason Mount, and Mbeumo are kind of like stretching the Sunderland lines, and then obviously forcing them to retreat a little more. As you can see here, Enzo Lefebvre, who is the attacking midfielder, ideally he's supposed to be here in order to apply more pressure on our ball carriers. But now, because of Bruno Fernandes' move, he's forced to retreat a little bit. This means that Casemiro, Yoro, De Ligt, and Shaw, they have a lot of space and time on the ball. As you can see here, Mbeumo and Bruno Fernandes are keeping these 6 Sunderland players busy. Again, more time means better decision making and better quality passes. And so here, Casemiro, as you can see, is able to move because he's got time. That's what matters. Like, you have to have time in order for, the play to be sharp and incisive. And then we are able to progress the ball. And then now, both Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes are going to combine in the final third. Both of them are absolutely devastating in the final third. So here, Bruno is going to make this move right here in order to free up this space right here for Mason Mount. And then Mason Mount, just sharp and incisive, absolutely ruthless and deadly. That was a beautiful goal. But again, the reason we were able to score the goal is just thanks to that patient build-up. And that patient build-up was enabled because of that Bruno Fernandes' new role in the build-up. Instead of just playing in a very rigid manner where he's just involved as part of that 5-man shape in the build-up, just move and stretch the pitch a little bit vertically. That makes it harder for the opposition to press. And another reason why we were actually quite potent going forward is because we didn't rely on the build-up phase. I think that Ruben Amorim kind of recognizes that our players are not really that comfortable with the build-up yet. I think that mentally the players are still a little bit weak. Therefore, it's very important to give them, some breathing room. And one of the best ways of doing that is to go long, mainly towards Sesko, and then fight for the second balls. And Sesko has been absolutely amazing. This is that RB school of, football, where he was actually quite good at collecting those second balls, and then here with the beautiful through ball towards Mbeumo. But he was not the only one. Mason Mount, who has been absolutely amazing in this game, was also great. I mean, look at this. This is amazing. I mean, Mason Mount is just the perfect combination of grit and then this. Intelligence and technique, absolutely amazing. And he was absolutely instrumental in allowing us to always win those second balls and maintain, a bit of control in the opposition's.
Please use subscribe, like, and share to stay informed about the latest developments in 2024-2025 season.